I've always found it funny that over the years someone will point to a different Call of Duty, usually their favorite, and say that was the last good one before corporate greed ruined it. The humor comes from the fact that the series was built as a corporate product to be churned out to stock shelves every year since its inception, when it was referred to internally as the Medal of Honor killer. This is what makes Black Ops Zombies' rise and continued popularity interesting to me. Like weeds sprouting out of the cement in a large city, Zombies prove that creativity from artists could bloom in even the most industrial of video game development environments. Last year, I made a video that analyzed Black Ops Zombies as one homogeneous entity instead of individual slices like most other retrospectives for this series do. It was meant as a personal capstone to share a unique perspective of this creative oddity that I've played since 2009. This video is meant to be an extension to that previous Black Ops Zombies retrospective. I'm making a conscious effort to not repeat myself too much, so I do recommend watching that video if you care to know my thoughts of the entire franchise prior to Black Ops 6's existence. The link will be at the top of the description. I originally didn't even plan on playing this game, however the launch had a positive enough reception that I decided to purchase it about a month after its release to see if things align closer to my tastes. They mostly do, but there's just a few things that I get hung up on that prevent me on completely enjoying this flavor of a Black Ops Zombies game. Let's get into what worked and didn't work for me. I want to start with the Easter eggs because they are what fueled my desire to write about this game more than I thought I would. Just like getting the game in the first place, I also originally planned on not making a video for this channel, covering my experience with it. The reason for this shift in decision is because a friend and I decided to play this game a little differently than the past Black Ops games. Due to our robust experience completing most of Black Ops 3 and 4's Easter eggs long ago, we were feeling smart enough, or stupid enough depending who you ask, to try, keyword being try, all the Easter eggs as guideless as possible for the first time. Liberty Falls was our warm-up for this endeavor, and was thankfully pretty straightforward. Something this game is mostly good at doing is making items that have some form of interactivity stick out in a subtle manner. An example of this is realizing the door to the electronics store must be breakable because there was a zombie spawn marked with the barbed wire inside of it. This information meant we could test different equipment and enemy attacks until we got a successful result, which in this case is the Mangler Cannon, either as a baited shot or score streak. Uniquely detailed assets also help clarify that an item is important even if now is not the correct time. The only item on this map that lacked any sort of clear environmental distinction was the valve that needed to be claimed off of the gardening hose. Mashing the interact button on everything is common behavior when blindly exploring a map, which meant I found this eventually, but it wasn't satisfying to do so. The discovery felt random and unintuitive compared to opening the electronics store. The only step that was throwing us off for an extended period of time was when we had to find 2 of the 3 parts we needed to suck up with the jet gun. I had forgotten the golden rule of puzzle solving in a first-person game I learned over a decade ago playing Portal 2. Look up. After finally seeing the parts by Blanchard's favorite egghead and crafting the required device, the rest of the quest fell together quickly since every other step used one of those distinct assets that we noticed earlier. Citadel was the second map we tried, and it was magnitudes more difficult to piece together than Liberty Falls. We spent dozens of hours over multiple weekends analyzing every pixel of this French castle. Our longest hangup was finding the horseshoe. That took almost as long as it took to figure out the entire Liberty Falls quest. Just like the valve, this item lacked the telegraphing most other key items have. Unlike the valve, this item had to be shot first, so you can't just blindly pick it up. This combination made the scavenger hunt for it a miserable experience. It felt like finding a needle in a haystack, but you don't even know what a needle is, so you're just flailing around until you get poked in the eye. Inspecting the swords in front of the statues was another brutal step to try and solve, and it was the first time we had to look up a hint towards a step. While not on our pride, we also wanted to keep the pace reasonable and not completely waste another weekend. It was a delicate balance to determine how much time we wanted to spend lost until we decided our time was more valuable. We decided to look up a text-only hint if we yielded 0 progress after an hour and a half to 2 hours. Testing the hypothesis and having it fail still classified as making progress. We had to be drawing blanks for us to finally resort to some sort of written help. We just wanted a little something to nudge us in the right direction. Across the other 4 maps, the steps we needed some light guidance include shooting the tentacle trap with the beam smasher, finding the numbers to open Nathan's cage, picking up the briefcases with Aether Shroud, hitting the valves with combat axes to get our third canister, deciphering the periodic table to get the Gorgofex, and filling up the mop bucket with the sprinkler. When it came to testing different hypotheses, there were plenty of times where we created red herrings for ourselves. A big one for me was thinking the times on this clock in Reckoning were the solution for getting the required computer password. I spent about an hour trying to derive a 4-digit password until I decided to look elsewhere. A second look at the nearby note made me realize it and the other similar notes I saw earlier were more than just lore documents. Another step where hours were wasted was freezing the lanterns on the tomb. We were certain the lighting on the crystal was important for figuring out which lamps to freeze, since some were darker than the others. We tried to freeze and shatter them at different location combinations. I eventually solved the step on accident while freezing them for one combination, and decided to just look up the step afterwards to see what I did, because I couldn't distinguish a pattern out of what I had just done. Freezing 3 lamps in quick succession was so obtuse yet simple that it felt genuinely insulting that we even dared to assume there was a more elaborate puzzle here. Another thing that occasionally tripped us up was when we would interact with things that were part of side quests. It was very jarring to find out the Cursed Talisman tasks were not part of Terminus's main quest upon its completion. Another instance was picking up the chess piece on Citadel. We thought you had to take the Spectral Knight somewhere to break something, but to our dismay, that patrolling knight was the reward. I don't want to pretend that this experience was nothing but tragedy. There were plenty of special moments that hit insanely hard by figuring out steps ourselves and would reinvigorate our confidence for choosing to play this way. One of my favorites was figuring out the code to unlock the red Doppelgass's containment cell on Shattered Veil. The chain of lightbulb moments was immensely satisfying. Putting together those pieces required a few matches, since the light randomized elements helped give me more data to work with. In general, I found steps with randomized codes easier to pick up on as the maps progressed. As my attentiveness towards a map's details grew, these small differences stuck out more prominently to me while searching. In this case, my first code word was Yeti, so I originally thought the clue had to do with the cryo-freeze ammo mod. Since I wasn't achieving any success, I pivoted off this for the rest of that match. Thankfully, I got a second code word crab in the next match, so I realized the word itself probably contained the code. The chalkboard in the schoolroom was something I had inspected earlier, so that jumped out pretty fast in my mind as something relevant to the task at hand. Its letter arrangements are also randomized, which made me confident I was on the right path. Sure enough, I was, and with some trial and error, I solved the number code for the cell. Other steps at least one of us solved that had similar levels of satisfaction include activating the Ring of Fire traps in a specific order on Citadel, repairing the pipes on Terminus, knocking down the dead scientist to get a blood sample on Reckoning, and all the various Wonder Weapon upgrade quests. The last part of each Easter egg was some sort of heavy combat challenge, usually a boss fight. If there's one area I felt like Black Ops 6 was vastly superior towards any prior game in the series, then this is it. The bosses require more spatial awareness, loadout planning, and mechanical execution than most of the previous game's bosses do. This is because these boss fights have more distinctive layers to the encounters. Gone are the days of performing the same task 3 times like a Mario game. There's more gradual escalation as the health bars decrease throughout the fights that make them more viscerally satisfying to engage with. The boss that I think shows off this higher level of design sophistication the best is the Z-Rex. Over the fight's duration, it keeps growing faster and meaner, which means the players need to escalate their speed and aggression in the match. If you're already panicking at the start, then you're probably not going to keep up with its later stages. This was our case as the second half of the fight intimidated us into submission a few times. Eventually we showed it that we were the apex predators in the pit with the unbridled strength that came from our maxed out maelstroms coupled with autoloading effects. The undead dinosaur really stood no chance at that point. With the release of Hollow Knight Silksong, the topic of hard difficulty was ignited again within the wider gaming internet discourse, with boss runbacks being a primary aspect of that conversation, which is the amount of time spent traveling back to a boss fight to try again. A few bosses in that game require some challenging platforming to return to, and that can sour the experience for many since it feels like your time is being wasted. Let me tell you, Girl the Great has nothing on a Black Ops 6 Zombies runback. Dying to bosses in this game means you will be replaying an hour's worth of trials and puzzles to get the opportunity of another boss attempt. When failure occurred due to poor loadout decisions, I didn't have a problem redoing everything because I needed that time to build up my new loadout. When failure occurred due to a mechanical mistake, I had a much harder time mustering up the determination to try again. I think a nice compromise would to include having a mechanic like the clone pods in Zetsubo outside of the boss fights arena to store your finalized loadout. You would also be prevented from returning to the core play space to make loadout changes. That way you could try the fight as many times with your current loadout, but if you wanted to make any adjustments, then you would have to restart from scratch. Overall, I'm proud of how much we were able to accomplish guideless, and it made our time with the game much more interesting. Our previous experience definitely ended up helping. There's a lot of design patterns that carry over game to game, like sucking up out of bounds items with black hole devices, and using dead wire on electrical equipment. I do think this lock and key design of Easter eggs loses its luster when you're praying something happens by interacting, shooting, or punching everything on the map with different combinations of perks and ammo mods. However, there were a lot of engaging puzzles that balance action a lot more gracefully than Black Ops 3 and 4. I noticed the need to hold a zombie while doing something is dramatically reduced, which makes these quests more fun in my opinion. I think the Zombies dev team have done their best job so far at striking that balance between cryptic, yet not completely insane. Cold War was too simple for my taste, but I do respect the vision for trying to make these quests more approachable. While I never played it, directed mode also seems like a nice compromise to get a core part of Zombies' DNA out to a wider audience. While I enjoy the Easter eggs of Black Ops 6, these quests have never been the focal point of why I've sunk hundreds of hours into each game. My main attraction to the series has always been its addictive progression that stems from its varied moment-to-moment decision making, and my feelings of how Black Ops 6 handles them is a little more complicated. The foundation this game was built on consists of the return to only have traditional round-based maps, since a lot of other recent COD Zombies experiences broke away from that mold. As someone who didn't play Vanguard or Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, because I heard they weren't worth my time, this really didn't mean much to me. What did mean something to me was that the developers seemed focused on addressing two common criticisms against Cold War Zombies, which were that it was absurdly easy, and that it lost a lot of the charm that made Black Ops Zombies so beloved to its fans. To Cold War's defense, it was trying to trim off the insanity of the prior entries that made the games too intimidating for new and casual players. Unfortunately, that trimming took away gameplay elements that made the series a rich experience like genuine secrets, playable character banter, and more exotic map locales. When it comes to difficulty, the better attempt Black Ops 6 made to balance the game was its augment system. A big piece of Cold War being easy was its Ethereum upgrades. Once you had everything upgraded to tier 5, your perks and equipment were so jacked up that the game couldn't send anything at you to create any meaningful pressure. The augment system allows gear to only have 2 upgrades this time, one major and one minor. This restriction also tries to build more interesting strategy to the loadout customization, and I think it mostly succeeds. Sometimes it feels like there is a best in slot setup for a piece of gear, but the system mostly provides unique benefits for playstyles that fit different builds and preferences. Another positive change to perk gameplay was delaying the Wonder Fizz spawning in until round 25. Unless you wanted to fulfill the traditional purity of going to each machine, there was zero practical reason to ever use any other perk machine beyond the Wonder Fizz in Cold War. I still appreciate the convenience of the newer Wonder Fizz, so this compromise felt perfect to me. While weapons did not have similar purpose restored to them, and that's one of the details that makes the design of these newer games less cohesive. Originally, they served the purpose as the consistent safe bet. You knew what you were getting compared to rolling the dice at the mystery box. Their problem nowadays is that their role is in direct competition with loadout weapons, which is the safest choice you can make. I'm not entirely against choosing your starting weapon, especially for things like camo grinding and Easter egg loadouts, but I do think they are too convenient in their current form for standard survival. There's no downside to choosing stronger weapons, and if this system is to continue, then I would like to see some drawbacks added to make investing in that weapon much more difficult. Some off-the-cuff examples include not allowing white tier weapons to be pack-a-punched, increasing the salvage cost of upgrading from white tier to green from 500 to 2000, and have rarity affect maximum ammo reserves for all non-pistol weaponry, so most guns spawn in with a painfully small amount of reserves. The only thing I am buying off the wall are armor upgrades, which also got a rework from Cold War, and in my opinion, they made it worse. Copied directly from Warzone, it's a system that does not translate well to zombies due to frequency and player input. In a battle royale, you can go over 5 minutes without an engagement, so needing to replay armor isn't too common. It's also a more tactical experience, where that level of player input is appreciated. In zombies, you are in constant action, so you are replaying at an insanely higher frequency. On top of that, replaying is still manual, so you'll be pressing the button on your controller or keyboard ad nauseum. If you're like me, you will also be throwing in the occasional melee to cancel the animation to prevent wasting plates on smaller repairs. This system throws off the game's combat rhythm into a more tedious direction and is honestly my least favorite part of the game. Armor should just auto-repair on pickup like a Doom game. The one time I unlocked golden armor on the tomb was one of, if not the best match I played of Black Ops 6 Zombies. Not needing to manually micromanage this blue bar opened my eyes to how much of a negative impact this system has had on the entire game's feel. While armor is the modern system that annoys me the most, the modern system that disappoints me the most are the changes to the point economy. In my opinion, it is the biggest offender to make someone claim Zombies just isn't what it used to be. The range of available points a player can earn from a single zombie has been constricted to a suffocating degree. Even in Cold War, melee and headshots both gave 115 points per kill, but in Black Ops 6, melee kill points were nerfed to 105, so for optimal play, it's headshots or bust. What makes this change so off-putting is that a whole avenue that weapons can excel in is completely sealed off. There is no longer the weak SMG or pistol that can amass a large sum of points if you know how to use it. Whenever I replay a map on Black Ops 3 or before, the old point system is the first thing I notice, and it feels so much better to engage with. I'm not just mindlessly shooting zombie skulls so that their heads are as empty as mine. I think the problems with the point system and other components people show disdain towards stem from a large game design decision, which is that the devs want you to feel like an even stronger badass faster than before. It feels like they looked back at the older games and thought, round 30 is where the real fun begins, so let's get players there ASAP. This game objectively has the fastest round progression in the series. Zombies can run much earlier, and there's no barriers to buffer them in the early rounds. Placing such high importance on getting people to high rounds is what I think has caused the most damage to the series' identity. My disagreement with this assumed goal based on observation is that Treyarch feels so focused on getting you to the destination that you end up glossing over the journey. Back in the day, reaching round 30 was a thrilling ambition, but now it's just a hollow expectation. While part of that is just my skill improving over the last 15 plus years, I can still feel something when I return to an older title going up to Black Ops 4 that is severely lacking in any game released after. Those first 30 rounds are so foundational to the Black Ops Zombies experience that devaluing them devalues the whole game. There is no more grand decision making, which leads to no formation of an in-depth, satisfying strategy. Despite the boring free ride, I won't lie, the destination is still fun. Being kitted out in Black Ops 6 feels great, and the special enemies do a respectable job at applying pressure. By the end of the map releases, I ended up liking this game's enemy roster quite a bit. It has a nice blend of new and returning enemies covering a wide range of abilities. My favorite new enemy of the bunch is the Doppelgast. Its sound design and animations are on point with some stylish acrobatics, and there's some fun tension hearing it chase you with that heavy pitter-patter. Some old enemies sport new tricks, like mimics being electrified to destroy thrown items like a trophy system, and the Elder Disciple, which forces enemy mutations. Speaking of that, the evolution mechanic creates some cohesion between the special enemies so that they feel like a more unified threat. Vermin can occasionally pop out of a zombie Resident Evil 4 style. They can then grow into a parasite. It takes a while, but if you let it fly around enough, it conjoins with another basic zombie to become a Doppelgast. Finally, if you let that chase you long enough, it will turn into the mighty Amalgam. I thought this made fighting the Endless Horde more dynamic and therefore more engaging. The only major mechanic I found that breaks high round difficulty from these special enemies are score streaks. Funnily enough, the problem stems from how frequently they drop from those same special enemies. It feels like the increased number of elites is in response to score streak spam, but that just means there's more streaks on the ground to spam. There are plenty of times where there are more of them than I can even use at a given moment. To sum up all these thoughts on the game's difficulty and mechanics, this constant buffet of chaotic carnage makes Black Ops 6 Zombies feel like eating just the cream of an Oreo. Sure, you're getting what's widely considered the best part, but there's no longer any extra flavor and texture from the cookie that's complementing the cream. If I hadn't spent so much time solving the Easter eggs in this game close to guideless, then I would have only put in a fraction of the time into the game because its base survival gameplay lacks the depth the series used to have, which kept me coming back for more. When it comes to returning atmosphere to zombies, let's start with the playable characters. Black Ops 6 returns to having a set crew, and they almost nailed it. Characters converse with each other between rounds again to share their thoughts and feelings. I felt like I got a good grasp on most of the character connections and enjoyed the banter. The part that held them back was their general gameplay dialogue. When I heard Gray talk about fancy fingering on Terminus after buying Speed Cola, I was pleasantly surprised they had brought back perk-specific dialogue. When I heard the same lines play on Liberty Falls, I was chill with that because canonically they don't fight the undead there. Unfortunately, hearing the same lines on Citadel made me realize new general gameplay lines map to map were just not happening. I did pick up on a few, like a middle-aged joke Weaver only makes on Citadel, but way too many lines were repeated on all 6 maps, and that really hurt the ability to connect with them. I greatly appreciated the return of certified Kevin Sherwood bangers. Every map in this game has a new secret song, and finding them for the first time was a delight. They quickly became my most anticipated feature of exploring a new map. Slave and Falling the Pieces are my favorites of the bunch, and if you haven't listened to them, then I highly recommend doing so. Kevin's work really is one of the most consistent aspects of this entire series. I'm also appreciative for the option to have a more classic style HUD that removed elements players like me find unnecessary, such as the minimap, medals, and enemy health bars. The only thing I thought was missing was a UI setting to remove those orange waypoint markers that lead you to Pack-a-Punch. Speaking of Pack-a-Punch, I was happy to see the return of upgraded weapons gaining more unique features and firing modes. The whimsy of not knowing what your gun will turn into was sorely missing from any gun in Cold War, and honestly it's been lacking since Black Ops 2. Guns like the SBD firing in a shotgun spread, the Olympia getting its iconic Dragon Breath rounds, and certain LMGs like the XMG increasing its fire rate over time like Destiny's Thunderlord were huge breaths of fresh air. There's also a lot more standard bonuses that aren't just a damage increase, like insanely tight hipfire, improved bullet penetration, and rate of fire increases. SMGs and ARs are 2 categories that I do feel need a little more special oomph treatment. To make zombies feel more like zombies, I think there was too much emphasis on bringing back popular Black Ops Zombies iconography. When the devs decided to bring something back from the series' legacy, it was usually something from Black Ops 2. I found this interesting because this game has the least consistent quality of the older games. However, I think that large variety is what makes coming back to it appealing. As far as rehashing old ideas go, this is the game where you can get the most creative with it and look no further than the jet gun. To say the jet gun received a second wind would be implying it even had a first one to begin with. It's practically a new wonder weapon in everything but the name. Vulturade's return also turned out to prove its worth more than I had originally anticipated. Vulturade plays a million times better with the current day looting and augment systems. While it was decently potent and buried, it always felt like there was something off with its implementation, which is why I think we never saw it return until now. It's like the perk was always meant for these systems and was originally invented a decade too early. It was an enticing option I would almost always pick as like perk 5 or 6. Unfortunately, not all returning assets are done so tastefully. Occasionally it comes off as desperate, and the Ice Staff returning on the tomb is the best example of that. Coupled with the remixed Origin soundtrack, it only makes you think of fonder times when the series was rapidly innovating and didn't have 4 beloved titles to constantly pull from. Its inclusion just screams, remember when we made a level so good it elevated the bar of what zombies could be and was arguably the most impressive piece of software running on the 7th generation of consoles. While I believe that the developers at Treyarch today still want their game to provide what the players want, I don't think they have a visionary and or executive permission to risk providing players with something they didn't even know they wanted. That flavor of confidence has been absent since Jason Blundell's departure from Treyarch, and I think this is another major essence missing from modern zombies. Another addition that was a real head scratcher was the return of Grief. This one puzzled me a lot because outside of it being a quirky novelty, the mode wasn't that beloved in the first place. I can't speak on how good it is actually in Black Ops 6, since I have not played it yet, and have no plans on ever doing so. The only major returning idea from Black Ops 3 were Gobblegums, but it bears a closer structure to Black Ops 4's similar elixirs. Gobblegum in Black Ops 6 is colored by rarity instead of activation type, and a post-launch update even made it so you spawn in with 3 every match. You earn them a lot more frequently than Black Ops 3, however, there are 0 infinite use classic gums. Even with the abundant supply, I found myself almost never using them since I already had so many tools at my disposal, so they often felt like unnecessary overkill. The Easter egg boss fights were the only time I felt the need to use them to tip the scales in my favor. The last topic in this section I want to cover are the events that dotted the calendar since COD has somehow become more live service pilled than my last visit at least 4 years ago. Their quality ranged from quite enjoyable to absolutely embarrassing. The best one by a long shot was the Starting Room Challenge. This is a very classic community challenge, and seeing an official mode that added an aura of legitimacy to it was very cool. The ones that focused deeply into the crossovers were anything but cool. While events with Seth Rogen or the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are technically free content add-ons, I've always held the principle that these events come at the cost of brand recognition and player respect. The quality of the products feels cheaper and therefore not worth engaging in. I feel that most social media posts about the game usually poked fun at how ridiculous these crossovers are. Maybe Activision just runs on the mantra, any publicity is good publicity, but I can't imagine that will play out well for them in the long run. Cold War's story was basic like the rest of the game, but it was also the first chapter of a new saga, so a slow start was expected. Black Ops 6 tries to build things up after the Forsaken's defeat and Requiem's incarceration, but doesn't do a compelling job. The story feels like it wants to return to the ridiculous complexity of Black Ops 2 through 4, but instead of actually achieving that insanity, everything is just smoke and mirrors. The story is also falling into the same trap as the gameplay, where it gets too caught up in the iconography of its own past to meaningfully tell a story that engages you in the present and excites you towards the future. The worst offender for this is that the second half of the season regressed into a Sam vs. Richtofen narrative. Having this much plot focus on a rivalry that hasn't even been a relevant topic since BO1 felt so contrived. While I respect the work that went into making 2 distinct boss fights, the choice to help one of them felt emotionally meaningless. I had no passion for revenge on Richtofen for the imprisonment, or Sam for her betrayal. We went with Richtofen since resurrecting 2 people over giving an AI a body makes way more logical sense. The only reason I see the side with Sam is if I want to experience the boss fight against Richtofen. This fixation on the past also dilutes the mysterious vibes the Dark Aether should have. It's this fabled place where countless civilizations have been banished to. There should be maps that contain pockets of weird architecture from long-forgotten societies that expand our minds and horizons, but that never happens. There are small hints of it at times, but most of what we see is nostalgia bait from the previous games. Yes, the original story was banished here, so it makes sense returning elements would reappear, but the balance of new and old is completely backwards. Old Aether bits should be sprinkled onto pre-existing civilizations. Black Ops 7 will be completely set in the Dark Aether, and the first taste of that journey is greatly composed of transit. Really? Another notable part of the Dark Aether saga is that it's trying to pull in the abandoned Chaos storyline that made up half the maps of Black Ops 4. I'm more on board with this decision only because those maps deserve better. Also, this decision retroactively makes Black Ops 4 a more cohesive package, since its previously separated stories now funnel into the same place. The Sentinel artifact plays a big role in the game's overarching narrative, since it's what has the power to make the new bodies, but there's no godly strings attached. The big hook of the Chaos storyline was its mythology blending, and any hint of that is sorely missing from Black Ops 6. If there's one recent addition to the collage of Black Ops Zombies iconography that I greatly appreciate, it's Mr. Peaks. I feel his playful exterior represents the whimsy of exploring endless possibilities, while his unknown role and intentions represent the mystery and danger that lurk within the Dark Aether. Is he a shepherd, a messenger, or the evil mastermind behind everything? No one knows, and no one should know. All that matters is that he's a demonic stuffed bunny that loves the boogie, and I wouldn't want him to be anything else. Exploring an unknown space like the Dark Aether should be unnerving and a little bit fun. Both those traits are given off by the vibes of Mr. Peaks, and further development of his character would ruin that connection. Even one paragraph of lore that attempts to flesh out his origins or intentions would remove more than it would ever wish to add. One of my biggest gripes with Black Ops 4 is that for the Aether side of the game, it wanted to explain everything. By the end of Tog der Toten, there was an answer for any question you could ever have, no matter the satisfaction level of that answer. I can only hope that this playful little guy remains a constant enigma until the very end. Overall, I liked my time with Black Ops 6 Zombies, but I didn't love it. It's a good game, but it comes from a lineage that was more than good. One that used to be unexpected with its direction and wasn't afraid to disempower the player. This series feels like it's in a similar spot Resident Evil was in before 7, where the series was trying to follow trends and not stay true to itself. Black Ops 6 thinks the shiny toys we played with are the most important part of what made it popular, while ironically ignoring the addicting early round progression and exciting innovation that made us keep coming back for more. I believe Treyarch has the potential to find their way again, but it won't be for Black Ops 7. There's just not enough time for that kind of undertaking. I'll be skipping that game, but I'll keep the series in my peripherals. If there's a strong course correction, then I'll gladly be there. Thanks for watching, and have a good rest of your day.